let's get right into it. What do you think that the implications are for Tesla of this election?
Well, Brad, firstly, thanks for having me. The implications for Tesla, I mean, overall, very, very positive. Firstly, the publicity. There is this faction amongst us that wants Tesla to advertise. Well, you don't get better advertising than this.
Yeah.
You just don't. And particularly in Middle America, in the part of America that we haven't yet conquered in terms of markets for Tesla vehicles, and it's going to be a very important part of the Tesla market because these are the people that buy semis, these are the people that buy trucks, and this is going to be a very important part of the Tesla portfolio.
Yeah, some people may not like that Elon helped out Trump. They don't like Trump. They didn't vote for Trump. They might not like that, but certainly I think overall the plus minus is more on the positive as far as Elon being out in front of packed crowds, people
Yeah.
hearing how he thinks and beginning to understand him as a person rather than what the media tells them about Elon. Another Joe Rogan interview, especially right after the huge interview with Trump, I think may have exposed more people to how Elon thinks. I think one of the really unfortunate things about the Inflation Reduction Act is that it puts hybrids at the same level as full battery electric vehicles. So despite a Model Y having 80 kilowatt hours batteries, that gets a $7,500 tax credit. Hybrids, which may only have a battery of 10 kilowatt hours or so, they're getting a similar tax credit. And really it's a supportive measure of the other automakers. What are your thoughts about potential removal of the IRA tax credit? And I guess maybe we could also talk about how they're going to be limited on how much they could do legislatively because there won't be any Republican supermajority in the Senate. So the Senate can still filibuster and slow things down.
I'm not a great fan of the IRA. And my good friend Rohan Patel tells me I'm wrong. He says that there's only one hybrid, very expensive one, that gets $7,500. I do know that it's been a god-awful mess administratively or from an execution point of view on the charging infrastructure. Look, I hate all government attempts to influence the market. I just dislike it entirely. Norway did it very well and seemed to have won doing it. But Norway is such a different case from a social and from a governance perspective. In my book, Tesla was doing just great and would do just great without the tax credits and without the IRA. In fact, they would do better. And you know why? Because they would be forced to engineer even better.
Mm-hmm.
So, it may take them a little bit longer or it may be more difficult or I don't know. But all I do know is it's terrible. It's terrible. Look at the terrible cars that the rest of the auto industry produced under this IRA. Horrible, terrible vehicles. So I don't care about the IRA. What will be the impact? I doubt you're going to be able to go back to the legislature. Trump has talked about wanting to wipe it away entirely, to cancel it. He doesn't have the power to do that, but he certainly has the power to slow walk the implementation and to cut back dramatically on implementing some of the measures and also reducing a lot of the paperwork around it. So I'm not in the same boat as most guys on this subject.
Let's talk a little bit about the executive branch. I think maybe there's some folks that are a little overly hopeful on what the executive branch can do, but the executive branch does have a wide range of power in the purse a little bit. They say Congress has the purse, but the executive branch can influence the purse,
Yeah.
and they can also influence implementation. So I'm curious, like, people expect this dream team of Trump and Elon and RFK Jr. and Dana
Vivek,
White and
don't,
Tulsi
don't,
Gabbard
don't
and
underestimate Vivek.
Vivek Ramaswamy as well.
Absolutely. I mean, Vivek is going to be in the cabinet. I'm convinced of that. I think RFK is going to be in the cabinet. He's going to be, Secretary of Health. It's a huge position. I don't know what position Vivek will be in, but he will be in the cabinet. Look, don't underestimate the impact that this administration can have on government without the support of Congress. Let's assume Congress can't nullify anything and can't ratify anything and they can't get anywhere. I think the one piece that Trump really wants to do is make permanent the IRS rates, if even drop them a little bit, the tax rates, even drop them a little bit further. I think that's marginal to the future, but what is paramount to the future is implementing a Elon Musk-like approach to running government.
And let me interject for 1 second.
Yeah.
So, what we're talking about potentially is what happened at X. When he came into X, they were overspending. Elon believes in small teams of people that are able to get more done without, like, the B and C players dragging down the A players and the rock stars. So what he did was cut about 80% of the workforce. Mainstream media said Twitter was going to die, but it's still alive and better than ever.
You have to understand that Congress today, in modern times, doesn't really make the law. What they do is pass a bill, and it turns into an act. The actual law that is implemented today is written by the agency given the power to implement that law. And the number of regulations that each law that Congress passes generates is unfathomable. A bill that becomes an act that may be 1,000 pages long will easily turn into tens of thousands of pages of regulations. I may be out,
Yeah.
by a couple of zeros one way or the
I'm
other.
laughing because you might be, you're probably right.
I don't think and every line of those thousands of pages is a trap for people who are being regulated by that law, but it's also an expense to implement that law, both to the people who are affected by that law and the people who are managing that law. And so you've built this gigantic bureaucracy with this enormous volume of regulations, they call them, they're laws, and you generate huge numbers of lawyer-driven litigation to either enforce or to solve the problem the law creates. So it's dragged.
And just points to slow things down. I don't know if you saw this, but recently it came out that the FAA was using YouTube videos to try and figure out how to decide or rule on SpaceX stuff as far as doing that. And it just slows things down, and there's a lot of uncertainty. So, what do you think Elon will do to?
Elon will go to first principles. He'll go to first principles exactly the same way as he did at Twitter. You start by firing 2/3 of the staff. They self-selected. If you read the story of Twitter, you can see how he worked. He got Twitter employees to select themselves to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And those who selected themselves to leave, they were the prime targets of whom he wanted to leave in the first place. Then of the balance, he selected the very best.
Yeah.
And how did he select the very best? He went to look at their work.
Yeah. He got embedded and lived and breathed it.
Even if he didn't, he got James Musk and the Musketeers to actually go in there and look at the work.
Mm-hmm.
So what emerged was this very tight team. But if you look at Tesla, if you look at SpaceX, you see exactly the same thing. At Twitter, he had to engineer it from an existing organization. In SpaceX and in Tesla, largely had to build it from the ground up. Here, he's got this gigantic, sprawling administration. He doesn't have dictatorial powers. He has to work within the law and the practices of this gigantic, sprawling. So it's more complicated. But he'll cut.
Fire 2/3. Like they have to give some recompensation or some compensation for that.
You know what? A lot of people will resign because they'll refuse to work for this. Hopefully, a lot of people resign. I guess it's too difficult to resign from such a cushy position. But yeah,
Well,
I mean,
8 years ago, it was the resistance from within, right?
oh yeah, it's
So
going to be terrible. I
some
mean,
may stick around.
if you read the evidence, the testimony of these guys from the IRS that were talking about the non-prosecution of Hunter Biden or the non-investigation of Hunter Biden,
Mm-hmm.
you can see just how powerful the forces are against Trump. If you just look at what happened within the FBI that led to the prosecution of many of Trump's first hires and the generation of this Russia.
Yeah, 3-year Russia hoax that came from the Hillary Clinton campaign.
Yeah, if you look at all of that, you see just how much opposition there is within these ranks of bureaucracies that I've described, because these people their lives depend upon the maintenance of this methodology. So it's going to be interesting to see how Elon figures out how to get rid of them. But this is what he's best at. And from the country's point of view, it's even more important than the things he's doing in these 6 great companies that he owns. It is a critical step we have to take to reset the American exceptionalism back to where it was